Everyone thinks Ned Stark died in King's Landing. His head was cut off in front of the whole city. People screamed, Arya cried in silence, and Sansa fainted. It was one of the most painful moments in Game of Thrones. But what if it wasn't really Ned Stark who died that day? Let's go back for a moment. We all remember how Eddard Stark, Warden of the North, left Winterfell and went south to be the Hand of the King. He never wanted that job. He hated politics. He believed in honor, loyalty, and truth. But King Robert was his old friend, and he asked for Ned's help. So Ned went thinking he could protect the realm. But King's Landing was full of lies, secrets, and dangerous people. It wasn't a place for a man like Ned, and here's where the theory begins. You see, there's something strange about the way Ned died. Joffrey suddenly changed the deal. Ned had agreed to confess his crimes in front of everyone, and in return he would be sent to the wall. Varys even told him to do it, for Sansa's safety. And Ned did it. He lied. For once in his life, he chose his daughters over honor. But then Joffrey surprised everyone and ordered his death anyway. The strange thing is, Varys was too calm, too controlled, and Sir Ilyn Payne, the one who cut Ned's head, he wore a helmet. No one saw his face. The sword came down, and the crowd screamed. But what if it wasn't Ned Stark standing there at all? What if just before the execution, Varys, who always had his own secret plans, helped switch Ned with someone else? Someone who looked like him? That's where the Faceless Men come in. We know the Faceless Men can take on any face. They can become anyone. They serve the many-faced god, the god of death. Arya joins them later in the series and learns how to wear faces, lie, and kill. But what if Ned had already been connected to them? Long before Arya, there are clues. First, let's talk about Jaqen H'ghar, the mysterious man Arya meets when traveling north. He was locked in a cage with 2 other criminals on a cart from King's Landing. Why would a faceless man, someone who can disappear in seconds, be in a cage, unless he chose to be there? What if Jaqen was there for Arya because he had known her father? And here's another point. The Faceless Men come from Braavos. Do you remember where Jon Snow got Longclaw, his sword? From Jeor Mormont, a man whose family had once ruled Bear Island. And do you remember who gave Arya the coin of Braavos? Jaqen H'ghar. That coin opens the doors to the House of Black and White. But here's the craziest part. What if Ned had trained with the Faceless Men in his youth? We know very little about Ned's life before Robert's rebellion. He spent time in the Vale, growing up with Jon Arryn and Robert Baratheon. But what if, during his early travels, he had crossed the Narrow Sea? Maybe after his sister Lyanna was taken by Rhaegar, Ned followed clues across the world. Maybe he even sought knowledge and skill to rescue her. Maybe he met the Faceless Men and trained with them. But Ned Stark is not a killer without reason. He wouldn't stay with them long. Maybe he left, but they remembered him. So when Varys saw that Ned would be executed, he knew it would destroy the realm. The North would rise, chaos would spread. So he made a deal. He contacted the Faceless Men. One of them took Ned's place. The real Ned was smuggled out, maybe through the tunnels below the Red Keep. Maybe even wearing a new face himself. And guess what? Arya later walks through those same tunnels when she returns to King's Landing. So what happened to the real Ned? Maybe he went to Braavos. Maybe he went into hiding. Maybe he watched as his children grew into warriors, leaders, and survivors. Maybe he cried alone, unable to return, always wearing a different face. Or maybe, just maybe, he trained again, becoming one of them, a faceless man, and Jaqen H'ghar. What if he wasn't helping Arya for fun? What if he was following Ned's wish to protect his daughter, to prepare her for the wars to come? Some say Jaqen is Ned Stark, the same slow voice, the same calm eyes, the same deep loyalty to Arya. It sounds crazy, but in the world of Game of Thrones, where magic, murder, and masks live side by side, nothing is impossible. And so the question remains, If Ned Stark didn't die, where is he now, and what role did he really play in the battles that followed? Next, we'll explore what happened after that execution and the secret war that may have been happening, unseen, across Westeros, led by a man who wore many faces, but had one goal: to protect his blood. The sword came down and the crowd gasped. Arya was shoved away by Jaqen, birds flew into the sky, and blood spilled on the stones of Baela's sept. But for those with sharp eyes, something was strange. The man who died, he didn't scream. There was no struggle, no last words, no cry for mercy, just silence. Even Ned Stark, a man of honor and pride, would have said something for his daughters. Maybe one last goodbye, but the man on the platform accepted death like a ghost, already gone before the blade touched his neck. That's the first real sign. Now let's go underground, beneath the Red Keep. Secret tunnels run like veins. Through the castle, Varys knows every one of them. He's used them for years. That's how he whispers through walls and makes kings dance to his words. But these tunnels have done more than hide secrets. They've carried living bodies away from certain death. The night before Ned's execution, Varys visited him in the black cells. We saw it. He tried to convince him to confess. He told him, "The realm needs you alive." But what if that wasn't the only message? What if Varys said more? Something we didn't see. Something about a way out. A plan. A face. A second chance. Now imagine this. In the middle of the night, someone enters Ned's cell. Not with guards, not with keys, just silence. A man with no face. A faceless man. He tells Ned, "You must die tomorrow, but you won't be the one to die." Ned, always the honorable one, hesitates. He wants to tell his daughters. He wants to tell Jon, but the faceless man shakes his head. "If they know, they will give you away. This is the only way to protect them." And so Ned agrees. At dawn, the switch happens. Maybe it's a spell. Maybe it's a mask. Maybe it's something darker. The blood of the many-faced god. Either way, the man who walks out to Baela's sept isn't Eddard Stark anymore. He only looks like him. The real Ned is already gone, hidden in the tunnels, dressed in rags, face covered, following Varys to freedom. And here's something even crazier. What if the man who died that day was a prisoner? No one would miss. Maybe one of the other men arrested during the chaos, or someone condemned to die anyway. The faceless men have their ways. They take faces, yes, but they also give them to the dead. So the crowd mourns. Arya watches, broken. Sansa screams. Robb marches to war. And Catelyn weeps in silence. But far away, hidden in shadows, Ned Stark breathes. He doesn't go home. He can't. Not yet. Instead, he travels east, across the narrow sea, with the help of Varys's contacts. Maybe he boards a ship under a false name. Maybe he's already wearing a new face. And where does he go? Braavos. Why Braavos? Because it's the only place where he'll be truly safe, where no one asks questions, where faces change like the wind. And because someone is waiting for him there. Someone who once told him, Valar Morghulis. This brings us to a deeper layer of the theory. You remember Syrio Forel, Arya's sword teacher. He fought Meryn Trant, then disappeared. No body, no blood, just vanished. What if Syrio was a faceless man too? What if he helped Arya because he had sworn an oath, not to her but to her father? And what if Syrio and Ned met again in Braavos? Imagine Ned, broken and angry, watching his homeland fall apart. He hears of the Red Wedding, of Robb's death. He hears of Jon at the wall. He watches, helpless, as his house is crushed. And he knows he must never show his true face again. But he also knows something else. The game isn't over. From the shadows, Ned begins to work. He uses the knowledge he learned during his short time among the faceless men. He learns to listen without being seen, to kill without being known. He watches the Lannisters, the Boltons, the Freys. He sends whispers to those who can change the course of war. Maybe he was the one who made sure Arya found Jaqen. Maybe he whispered to the Brotherhood, without banners. Maybe he helped set things in motion, things no one could trace back to him, because sometimes, to protect the ones you love, you have to become no one. So next time someone tells you Ned Stark died on that platform, ask yourself, did he really, or did he become something more dangerous than anyone expected? A Stark with no face. Arya Stark's journey after her father's death was long, painful, and full of blood. She lost her home, her family, and her childhood. But more than that, she lost direction. She wandered through a cruel world with only one thing in her heart: revenge. But what if she wasn't truly lost? What if someone was always watching, always guiding her from the shadows? Not a god, not a stranger, but the one man she thought she'd never see again, her father, wearing a new face. Let's go back to that moment under Baelor's sept. As Sir Ilan Payne raised the sword, Arya was in the crowd. She was just a little girl with a sword hidden in her clothes, helpless. But then someone grabbed her, Yoren of the Night's Watch. He pulled her away just in time. Now, here's the twist. What if Yoren didn't act alone? What if someone whispered in his ear before that day, told him to watch the crowd, told him exactly where Arya would be, told him to keep her safe, no matter what? And who would care that much? Not a stranger. Not even Varys, only a father. Maybe Ned, now hidden as a faceless man, couldn't speak to Arya, but he could still pull strings. Through Varys, through old friends, through the network he was slowly building in the shadows. As Arya traveled with Yoren and the others, she began to change. She became tougher. She learned to hide, to lie, to watch. All the things Ned would never have taught her in Winterfell. But now, from afar, he let the world teach her, because he knew she would need it. Then comes one of the biggest turning points in Arya's story. Harrenhal. There, she meets Jaqen H'ghar, a man who speaks strangely, moves like smoke, and kills with ease. He gives her 3 lives as payment for saving him and his companions. But here's the real question. Why does a faceless man take such an interest in a young northern girl? Jaqen could have disappeared after she helped him. He didn't owe her anything, but he stays. He watches her. He even gives her a chance to join him. He sees something in her, something deeper. Maybe he doesn't just see it. Maybe he knows it, because someone told him. What if Ned Stark, now living in Braavos under a new identity, sent word to the House of Black and White? Maybe he told them, watch this girl. She's my blood. She has the gift. And Jaqen, following that request, tests Arya, guides her, prepares her. When he finally gives her the iron coin and says, Valar Morghulis, it's not just a message. It's a key, a door. A secret pathway that leads her exactly where her father needs her to be. The only place where she can survive, learn, and one day fight back. Braavos. Now imagine Ned, hidden in the shadows of that same city, hearing whispers that his daughter has arrived. He can't meet her, can't speak to her. But maybe he watches her enter the House of Black and White. Maybe he walks past her in a different face as she trains. Maybe he feels pride, pain, and fear all at once because she's becoming like him, a ghost, a blade, a shadow. But Arya's path isn't easy. She's told to forget her name, her past, her identity. But she resists. She remembers Winterfell, her brothers, Needle, her father. She can never let go of Ned Stark, because deep down she believes his spirit is still with her, guiding her blade, whispering through her memories. And maybe, just maybe, that feeling is real, because while she trains to become no one, her father, the first Stark to become a faceless man, is watching every step she takes. He sees her fail. He sees her fall, but he also sees her rise, stronger than ever, And when Arya finally leaves the Faceless Men, when she says, "A girl is Arya Stark of Winterfell," it's not just her claiming her identity, it's a message. It means she's ready to finish what he couldn't, to avenge the family, to destroy those who broke their house, to kill for the right reasons, the way the old Ned never could, but the new Ned finally understands. So when Arya crosses the narrow sea again, she doesn't do it alone. Her heart is full of faces: Syrio, Jaqen, her mother, her brothers, and, maybe, just maybe, one more, a faceless shadow walking beside her unseen. Ned Stark still watching, still guiding, still fighting for the North. When the North remembered Ned Stark, they remembered honor, justice, and the pain of losing him. But what they didn't know was that the man they thought was dead might have been the one keeping them alive, from the shadows. War broke out. After his death, Robb Stark raised the banners. The North marched to avenge their father, but it was all fire and blood, one battle after another, the War of the Five Kings, houses falling like dominoes. But behind the chaos, someone was watching. Someone was guiding events without ever stepping into the light. The theory says this: Ned Stark didn't stop fighting. He just changed how he fought. He could no longer lead openly. He couldn't write letters or send ravens in his name. So he used whispers, secrets, and faces. The Faceless Men have power, yes, but more than that, they have access. A person in every city, in every hall, and in Braavos, where debts are honored above all else. Ned might have made a deal, not for gold, not for power, but for something deeper. Revenge, cloaked in silence. Let's look at key events in Westeros and ask who benefited from them. First, Tywin Lannister's death. We all remember how Tyrion shot him with a crossbow on the toilet. But how did Tyrion escape? Varys helped him. Varys, who had once tried to save Ned, who had access to tunnels, to ships, to secrets. But what if Varys didn't act alone? What if Varys's bird was actually a faceless man sent by Ned, a quiet helper who pushed the pieces just right, making sure Tywin died and the Lannister grip weakened? Second, the Red Wedding. Now we know the Boltons and Freys betrayed Robb. But that move set off a chain reaction. It made the North boil. With rage, it set up Ramsay's downfall. It gave Arya her list. And most importantly, it made the Freys hated by everyone. Soon after, Arya returns to Westeros and wipes out House Frey, all of them, one by one, with faceless precision. Could Ned have made that possible? What if he gave the names, the faces? The method? Because if anyone wanted vengeance for Robb and Catelyn, it was the man who loved them most. Third, Littlefinger's fall. Peter Baelish, the master of manipulation. The man who started it all by betraying Ned. The one who told Lysa to poison Jon Arryn. The one who whispered lies into everyone's ears. And who was it that finally brought him down? Sansa and Arya. But here's something people miss. Arya didn't just guess he was guilty. She knew. She read his movements like a book. She smelled his fear. She was trained to see past masks. But what if someone had been feeding her pieces of the truth all along? Letters, clues, names, even if she didn't realize it. And who had the reason, the power, and the perfect face to do it? Ned Stark, still out. There. Still fighting a war only he could understand. And what about Jon Snow? Jon rose through the Night's Watch. He became Lord Commander, then died, and came back. He fought the White Walkers. He united the North, but he never knew where his strength truly came from. What if, long ago, someone left whispers about him in the right ears? What if it was Ned, the real Ned, who sent information about Jon's parentage to Sam, or to someone? Who would eventually reach Sam? Not directly, just hints. A name, a map, a sealed message. Something that would light the spark, because only one man knew the truth of Jon's birth, and even if he couldn't tell the world, maybe he made sure the truth would rise at the right time. But here's where the theory gets even darker. If Ned is alive, if he has become a faceless man, has he changed? Has he become colder, more like them? He once believed in open honor, but now he hides behind masks. He once refused to lie, but now lies are his weapon. Has he lost himself, or is this just what he had to become to win? Because while Jon, Arya, and Sansa became legends on the battlefield, maybe it was their father who won the war without anyone ever seeing him. Maybe he killed enemies, delivered justice, and crushed traitors, all without a name, a dead man waging a war no one else could fight. And maybe, even now, he's still out there, watching the kingdoms rebuild, waiting for the day he can finally go home, or the day he decides to wear one last face. It sounds insane at first, right? Ned Stark, the Warden of the North, Lord of Winterfell, father of 5, becomes Jaqen H'ghar, the mysterious faceless man with a strange accent and deadly skills. But what if it's not so insane? What if it's the ultimate disguise? Let's break it down. We've talked about how Ned may have been rescued before his execution, how a faceless man could have taken his place, and how he may have fled to Braavos. But what if he didn't just hide? What if he became one of them, fully? Now imagine this. You're Ned Stark. You've lost everything. Your house is scattered. Your wife is alone. Your son is riding into war. And the people you trusted, the Lannisters, Littlefinger, the king you served, betrayed you. You realize the world doesn't work on honor. It works on secrets, on masks, on faces. You can't go back home. You're thought to be dead. But there's one place in the world where you can disappear completely, become someone, or no one. Else Braavos, the House of Black and White. Maybe Ned went there with Varys's help. Maybe he begged them to take him. Or maybe he already knew the way. We don't know how much of Ned's youth was spent beyond Westeros. Maybe in his younger days, during the wars, he visited Braavos. Maybe he met the faceless men before, and that brings us to Jaqen H'ghar. This man appears out of nowhere. He's locked in a cage with 2 other dangerous criminals. But here's the thing. A faceless man doesn't get caught unless he wants to be caught. So why was Jaqen there? Simple. To meet Arya. But let's flip that on its head. What if Jaqen wasn't there to meet Arya? What if Arya was there to meet him because he's her father? Think about it. Jaqen always speaks to Arya with care. He never hurts her. He teaches her. He protects her. He gives her power when she's still a helpless girl. And then he disappears, only to return in Braavos. When she's ready to train, it's almost like he's guiding her, just like a father would. His lessons are cruel, yes, but they make her strong. Everything he does pushes her toward survival, toward vengeance, toward her destiny. Now, the counter-argument is, Jaqen changes his face. He doesn't look like Ned at all, but that's the point. If Ned became a true faceless man, his face, the one we knew, doesn't exist anymore. He can be anyone. He can be the charming stranger with red hair. He can be the silent assassin. He can be Jaqen H'ghar, a name that's probably not even real. And the speech, the strange way Jaqen talks, could be part of the act. After, all Ned Stark spoke like a Northman, a Stark. He was known, recognizable, but a man who speaks in third person, who acts like a foreigner. No one would ever suspect him, not even Arya. And maybe that's the deepest tragedy of all. Arya may have spent years with her father, and never knew it. Maybe that's why Jaqen cared so much when she left the House of Black and White. Maybe that's why he didn't stop her. He let her go, because she had learned enough. Because she wasn't no one. She was Arya Stark of Winterfell, and that was all he ever wanted for her, to remember who she is. But here's where it really gets wild. What if Ned, as Jaqen, also trained other people? What if he's still active, quietly shaping the fate of Westeros from the shadows? What if his final face hasn't even been shown yet? In the books, there's a character called Alchemist, a man with a pale face and a cloak. He appears once. Some fans believe he's Jaqen. Others say he's something else entirely. But what if he's just another form of Ned? Watching, waiting. Because one day Arya might look across a battlefield, into the crowd, into the shadows of a great hall, and see someone familiar, not a king, not a lord, but a man with no name, no face, only eyes that remind her of home. The question now is, if Ned Stark is still alive, wearing the face of Jaqen H'ghar, will he ever show Arya the truth, or will he die as he lives, in silence, in shadow, protecting his children without ever letting them know? Everyone thought Ned Stark's story ended with a sword and a lie, but what if that was only the beginning of his true purpose? Not just as a father or lord, but as a silent guardian of the realm. What if the real reason he joined the Faceless Men wasn't to hide, but to fight something coming, something ancient, something cold? Let's take a step back. The White Walkers, they were not just myths. They were real, they were rising, and almost no one believed it, except for a few. Men at the wall, old maesters and wildlings who saw death walking. But what if someone else knew? Someone who saw the signs earlier, long before the rest of the world was ready. What if Ned Stark knew? Remember the Stark words. Winter is coming. It's not just about snow. It's about a force that once nearly wiped out all life. The long night. The first time the White Walkers came, the world almost ended. The wall was built, the Night's Watch was created, and ever since, the North remembered. But what if some Starks did more than just remember? What if they prepared? Ned Stark always took the old ways seriously. He followed the rules. He prayed in front of the weirwood. He kept the Stark traditions alive. But there was always something heavy in his eyes, like he carried a burden no one else could understand. Now let's bring in the Faceless Men. Most people think they're just assassins, but they're more than that. They came from Valyria, from slaves who escaped the doom. They worshipped the many-faced god, death itself. And what does death hate more than anything? Unnatural life. And the White Walkers, they are the most unnatural thing in the world. They do not die. They twist the dead into weapons. They break the cycle of life and death. So the Faceless Men. They may have their own secret war against the Walkers. They may see it as their sacred duty to restore balance. Now imagine this. Ned escapes death. He reaches Braavos. He joins the Faceless Men. But once inside, he learns a truth he never expected, that the real war isn't with kings and thrones. It's with death that won't stay dead, and that changes everything, because now Ned isn't just hiding. He's gathering knowledge, learning ancient magic, searching through forbidden texts, maybe even traveling into forgotten places in the East, places where the old world still breathes. He's not just trying to protect his children anymore. He's trying to save all of Westeros. And here's where things get spooky. The Faceless Men have secrets locked in their temple. Faces, yes, but also history, visions, names of kings and monsters. They might know where the Night King came from. They might know how to stop him, and maybe they know it takes more than dragon glass and Valyrian steel. Maybe it takes a sacrifice. Someone with Stark blood, someone bound to both the old gods and the new, someone who carries the memory of Winterfell, of honor, of death. Someone like Ned. What if Ned volunteered for something bigger? Not just to vanish, but to become a key in the final battle. Not as a warrior, but as a guide, one who would move through the world unseen, placing people where they need to be, making sure Arya gets her training, Jon becomes a leader, Bran awakens his powers, and Sansa becomes the mind Winterfell needs. Each child becomes a weapon in their own way, and maybe that's not by accident. Maybe Ned made sure of it, because who better to shape the fate of the realm than a man who gave up his own name for the future. Think about Arya being the one to kill the Night King. Think about how she knew to move like a ghost, how she struck without sound. She didn't learn that in Winterfell. She learned it from Braavos, from the House of Black and White, from Jaqen, from her father. And Bran, he became the three-eyed raven, the memory of the world. But he needed protection, time, and the right people around him. That all happened quietly. Like someone was arranging it, like someone was pulling strings in the dark. And Jon, the biggest piece of all, the son of Rhaegar and Lyanna, the heir to the throne, raised as Ned's bastard, hidden from the world. Who kept that secret? Ned. He never told, never slipped, not even to his wife, because he knew that child. Jon Snow would either unite the realm or destroy it. So maybe that's the real reason Ned never came back, not because he was a coward, not because he couldn't, but because he had work to finish, work that no one could ever know about. And when the long night came, maybe his mission was finally complete, or maybe it's not over yet, because death wears many faces, and some of them look familiar. The Night King is gone. Arya drove a blade of Valyrian steel into his heart, and just like that, dust. Ice shatters, whites fall, the sky clears. The Great War is over, the living won. But that's where this theory takes one final turn. Because if Ned Stark was still alive, if he truly became a faceless man, then this victory wasn't just fate, it was his design, his legacy, his final play in a game of death and silence. Let's pause here and look at the aftermath of that night. Arya, the girl who killed the Night King, simply walks away. She doesn't want titles. She doesn't stay in Winterfell. She gets on a ship and sails west to places where the maps end. She says she wants to see what's beyond Westeros. But what if that's not all? What if she was told to go, not by a queen, not by a lord, but by someone older? What if, the night after the battle, she was visited, not by a dream, not by Bran, but by someone real, wearing a face she didn't recognize, but whose presence made her feel safe, familiar? What if a faceless man came to her tent, stood in the shadows and said just one line, "You've done what I couldn't." And maybe she looked at him, confused, ready to draw her blade. But he removed the mask, just for a second, and what if she saw the face she hadn't seen in years, the face she cried for, the face that was supposed to be buried under Baela's sept, the face of her father, Ned Stark? She wouldn't scream, she wouldn't speak, she would just understand. And maybe that's why she left Westeros, not to explore, but to give him time, to keep his secret, to let the world think he was long dead, because the truth would shake the realm. Imagine if they knew Ned Stark lived, that he had been hiding behind 1,000 faces, that he let kings fall, armies die, and wars rage without ever revealing himself. They'd call him a traitor or a god. Neither would be safe, so he remains a ghost, a story, a whisper. But what does a man like that do after the Great War? He doesn't return to Winterfell. His children are grown now. They've won their battles. His job is done. But there's still one more part of this theory. One more possibility that ties everything together. What if the many-faced god isn't just death? What if it's memory, history? The idea that some things must be forgotten to protect the future. Ned Stark was once the man who held the truth of Jon Snow's parentage. He never told, not even to his wife. He carried the weight alone. That's who he was, someone who suffered in silence to protect others. So maybe that's what he continues to do in the far corners of the world. Maybe there's a man who wears different faces every day. He helps strangers. He ends quiet wars before they start. He kills not for coin, but for justice. Maybe he wanders like a nameless ghost, helping keep the world from falling back into chaos. Or maybe he guards something, a door, a truth, a power that no one else must ever find. And every time someone asks, whatever happened to Eddard Stark, the answer is simple. He became no one, so that everyone else could become something more. And maybe, just maybe, one day, when the world needs him again, a man will appear, a man with sad eyes, with quiet strength, a man who once told his children, the lone wolf dies but the pack survives, and that will be the day the pack is complete again. In a world that rewards cruelty, celebrates fire, and bows to crowns soaked in blood, a man like Ned Stark was never meant to survive, and maybe in the end he didn't. Not the Ned Stark the world once knew, not the Warden of the North, the Hand of the King, the man who believed honor could save a kingdom, but maybe something deeper lived on. Not a body, not a title, a purpose. As we close this theory, let's ask something bigger than just, did he survive? Let's ask, what if Ned Stark became the very thread that quietly held the realm together, even after everyone thought he was gone? Game of Thrones gave us many kinds of power. Daenerys had dragons, Cersei had fear, Jon had blood, and Bran had time. But Ned, he had silence, he had pain, and he had a heart that would die 1,000 deaths if it meant his children could live. That's not the kind of hero history writes songs about, but it's the kind of hero who shapes the world from behind the curtain. So let's retrace the hidden legacy, who protected Arya in the darkest tunnels, who made sure she met a man who would change her life, teach her to kill for justice, who let her become death itself and then find her way back, who raised Jon Snow under the shame of bastardhood just to keep him alive, who kept the most dangerous secret in Westeros locked away, even when it broke his own family, who taught Sansa to be cautious, to watch, to trust no one too easily, who gave her the strength to outlive monsters like Joffrey, Littlefinger, and Ramsay, who raised Robb with honor so he could die with pride, who taught Bran the value of listening before acting so he could one day become the memory of the world. It was Ned. And maybe, if this theory holds true, if he became a faceless man, if he walked away from his identity and became no one, he did it not to escape death, but to give life to his family, to the North, to the very idea of hope, the final irony. Everyone thought he was weak, naive, a man out of place in a world of shadows and lies. But what if he adapted in the most painful way? What if he learned to lie, to kill, to disappear, not because he wanted to, but because he had to, because the real war wasn't for the throne. It was for the soul of the realm, and sometimes to save that soul, a man has to lose his face. So, maybe one day, years after the war, when peace finally holds for more than a moment, there will be a story told in a quiet tavern about a man who never gave his name, who always paid in silver, who watched everything but said little, who once saved a girl from a fire, then vanished, and maybe that girl will describe the way he looked at her. Not like a stranger, but like someone who had known her forever. She won't know why, but she'll remember his eyes, and the storyteller will lean in, eyes wide, and whisper, "Some say that was Eddard Stark, and no one will believe it." And maybe that's exactly what he wanted, because heroes are remembered, but legends hide in plain sight, and Ned Stark, the man who lost his name to give his children a future, may be the greatest legend of all.